All right, so this is a really good exercise, right? Can you guys see why I enjoy the motivational so much? If you were being asked the questions, what did you feel like when you were going through giving your answers?
I felt good. I mean, felt good.
Yeah. Did you rediscover your purpose of what you're in business for, what your goal is as you were answering that question?
I don't know, but I think about that every day.
And Andrea, I'm gonna call on you for a second because we asked a question, right? And as we were going through our breakout session, you read all the questions to me first. You actually mentioned that it almost sounds as if I'm asking the same question. But then we flipped and we switched roles. And now when I asked the questions to you, did you feel as if they were the same question still, or did it have a different meaning to you now that you were answering that question?
It definitely felt different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it did make me think. It actually made me feel like you were very interested in my answers, which was surprising to me because when I read it, it felt so, I don't know, mundane.
Right? And we had a conversation about it because when you started off, you wanted to improvise. And then I stopped you immediately and I said, no, go through, let's read it exactly as it is. And did you notice how once we read it verbatim, and I even gave her the script, and I'll give you guys the script too, but once you read it verbatim, it comes off as authentic. It actually, as you're reading that question, you get in tune because now you want to hear the answer because, let's just be honest, you asked a great question. You've asked a question that a psychologist went through to discover to make sure this is a good question. So if you asked it, and the person asking the question, did you feel like you were asking great questions as you read it? Yeah.
Definitely.
And here's the part about the script and following. The key to this is you can tell them up front. I know salespeople in the different roles that we've had, we've always been trained to believe that you do not want to stand up and read a script in front of somebody. Well, I've had Mike stand up and read the script in front of you. Andrew, when we were working together, I actually stopped you to make sure you read the script verbatim. Because what you find is when you're reading the script verbatim, two things happen. You're showing up to that candidate and you're telling them, this is about you. Easy script to say is, hey, I want to make sure that I stay focused on you and what's going forward. So I'm actually going to read this verbatim just to make sure that I don't put my own personalities into it so we can really get more information about you versus who I am or what I believe. And so now when you go through and read the script, you can actually read it verbatim. You can stumble over it, you can do whatever. But if you're reading this exactly the right way, what did Andrea just say? She said that it felt very authentic. And it does because as you're reading this verbatim, you actually want to know the answer. And what you end up finding out that something props in your brain and you almost want to ask the next follow-up question. And then when you read, it gives you the follow-up question to ask, right? So this is that same thing that we talk about. If we follow the steps, we follow the tips, we follow the tools, it's going to be the perfect scenario for us. All right, bear with me. I have to re-share my screen.
While you're doing that, can I ask a question? My apologies, I got called off into a meeting, so I missed a portion. So the part of the motivational chart where it has priority 3 and 4, are we asking the candidate to fill in that priority 3 and 4 as we're making the chart?
Great question. Yes, you are. So what you're asking them, it's literally that, right? So you're going to ask them, what's a priority for them, right? You want to ask them to give you insight. I'm going to tell you the ones that traditionally pop up. Travel, family,
Volleyball.
volleyball,
Coaching.
Yeah, coaching was mine. One of the candidates we just interviewed, coaching was his. Let's see, family, travel, coaching,
Religion.
religion is a very big one. Whatever hobby they go through. Not when you're sick, but the opposite, healthcare. Health ends up being another one. Yeah, family. And health, working out, exercising, those things tend to pop up on a regular basis, right? So you leave it blank because you don't want to steer them, you want to hear where they go, right? Take religion, for instance. If you're not an overly religious person, matter of fact, if you do things that are the exact opposite, think about your future goals. In 5 years from now, if they're opening a church and you never want to see a church again, is that a good fit? Does that match, right? But then on the opposite side, if you're trying to reconnect spiritually and they're doing it as well, in 5 years from now, that might be a great marriage between the two, right? If they want to coach, they may talk about the different aspects. They want to go to the nationals each year for the AAU track meet, right? So they're going to go to Florida every single year. But by them doing that, they are deeply motivated and they are affecting the lives of the children. If your culture is one that you want to give back, you want to help the communities in which you serve, do you guys match? You might not think so, but now you just had a conversation about it. Now you can see that those priorities, they actually match because now it is them giving back in a certain capacity. So yeah, the bottom box is priority 3 and 4. You want to ask them, what's a priority to you, right? You want to give them an opportunity to answer that. And then we're going through these questions, 1, 2, 3, 4, with whatever scenario they give. Now, on your best interviews, right? I just had a very good interview with a young lady. We just did her motivation. The motivational took roughly about 28 minutes to complete. She had great answers, things that I wanted to go expand upon and dig into. But following the script, I got all the information that was there. Now the interview ended up taking longer because I wanted to have more conversations with her. But from a standpoint of having the information necessary to make a decision if I want to green light, go to the next step or not, I had that within the 28 minutes because I went through the 4 priorities, 4 categories to ask those questions. So we talk about time frame, right? So now let's look at where we are. Share my screen. All right, so we're at the end of meeting 2, right? And so now in the interview process where we are, right? We have now gotten to the point where we're now about to get a different perspective from others to keep yourself honest, right? But before we go there, let's look at the time that we've invested. And then we're going to look at it from your side and then from the candidate side. So the first thing we did our job description and posting. We made sure it embodies our vision. It embodies our values. It embodies what we want the person that we're hiring, what we want their role to accomplish. The second thing that we did, we posted it. We started to get resumes in. We started to screen those resumes, right? We said we're going to take roughly 20 minutes, 1 day a week, filtering through the resumes that we receive, making sure we're red lighting, green lighting the people that we receive, right? We green lighted this candidate. Now we went from looking at the resume to doing a screening phone call. Our screening phone call should be roughly about 8 to 10 minutes, right? In that screening phone call that we have, we're using the STAR technique to make sure we're purposeful with our time. Situation, task, actions, what results happen from whatever we pick out of that resume that we want to dig into, right? Whatever we start that's important to us, that's what we're asking. So now we offered them to take the KPA, right? No time on our end, right? So right now we're at the 20 minutes reviewing resumes, 10 minutes for the screening phone call. Now we got the KPA back. Now we set up our first in-person interview. That first in-person interview will take between 1 to 2 hours to go through, right? So now our 30 minutes is now, let's say it's a full 2-hour interview. We really like the conversations went really long, right? So now we're 2 hours and 30 minutes. We schedule our second interview. Our second interview, we do the life story, we do the motivation. With this client, really good, things were great. We had some very good conversations. We spent another 1.5 hours with this client, right? So now we're at roughly 5 hours in this process to interview and go through and find somebody. Can this all be done in the course of 1 week? Absolutely. We're talking about 5 hours of time that's been taken up. So now we think about slow to hire. We did a lot of the legwork up front to know what our business is, what we're looking for, who we want to have inside of that business, right? If we did that legwork up front, now it makes it easier to start going through this process. This process, we're following the script the whole way through. We have this tool that makes it a very easy process for us. So now we have some more things that we're going to do on our side, but let's pause there. We're going to come back to that. Let's look at the candidate. What have they gone through, right? We don't want an excessively long process for them. So what have they done? They applied for the job. That's at their own time, right? We don't know how long it took them, but that's what they were going through. They did initial phone screening with us. That initial phone screening was roughly 8 to 10 minutes, right? After that, they did the KPA. The KPA was at their own personal time when they wanted to, 45 minutes to go through the KPA. Now you set up the first initial interview, right? This is their screening, the real interview that they go in, they come dressed, they're ready to go. First interview done. They got to learn about themselves. They got to hear about themselves the whole time. And they spent more time finding out about themselves than they found out about you at all, right? Second interview happens, right? Everything is great. They move forward to the second interview. In that second interview, what comes up? she gets to go, or the candidate gets to go through, and now they're talking about their life story, right? They know more about themselves again. And now in that second part of that second interview, we're going through the motivation. Now we're tying their future in with what they've connected with you, right? So now if we go back, I can tell you what your candidates are thinking at this time. Large part of this time frame, if they haven't asked you at this moment, they're going back and they're rereading the job description. They're like, this is a different experience. I'm enjoying every bit of it because it's been all about them, right? And so now they want to make sure that it lines up with the job description. This is where they want to be. So your job description that we wrote in the very beginning, it's very important because they're going to use it as their reference point to make sure that I'm in the right industry and this is where I want to be, right? I can tell you there's been a number of times that we got to the end of the process and a candidate will say this, I actually forgot what I was interviewing for, but I just enjoy this process so much that I'm here. Whatever you tell me to do, I'm ready to do. But that's the part of them getting to talk about themselves, them building that trust with you and wanting to go further, right? So now our next step, we have 5 hours invested. We've dug in, and now, let's be honest, we like this person. If we greenlight them the whole way to this point, we're enamored, we really want them, right? And let's be honest, if we did this all in 5 hours, we heard Riley, they've gone through, they've hired different people at different times. A lot of times you still have business that you're going through. This 5 hours that you're spending interviewing this person could take the course of a week to 2 weeks, right? Could take up to 30 days, right? But this time frame that you went through, you haven't invested a lot of time, but now you're enamored. And also, what's still sitting there? That pain point that told you you needed to hire somebody in the first place. So you still feel that pain of, I need somebody. They've checked all the boxes thus far. Let me just bring them in and run with it, right? I'm willing to take that risk on. Slow to hire. We don't need to take that immediate step yet. Why? Because there's still a process that we need to go through. Why do we still go through this process? Because we want to make sure that we're showing up in the right way for them when they join our organization, but we want to make sure the right person is joining. We're still playing red light, green light, but now we're going to think about what can we do to get a different perspective from others, right? So let me ask and open up. If we're looking at getting a different perspective from others, right? What's a way we can do that about the candidate that we've been interviewing to see, is this going to be a right fit for your business? How can we get a different perspective?
You could invite someone to a social outing.
Invite someone to a social, absolutely. Absolutely. What's an old school thing that we used to do on a regular basis? When we get a resume, we go through the interviews, and what do we ask for at the bottom of it? References. We can call, check references for people to ensure that they show up the way that they have in the past. You know, another great option, and this is what we have, and this goes to the culture that you have in a market center. I like socials, and we also like defense boards, right? Some of the Fortune 50s that I have, we would actually do more panel interviews and defense boards than anything else. And the reason being is because, what's that old phrase? 2 heads are better than 1. Getting the perspective from somebody who doesn't have that same pain point that you do, it now will make it easier to make sure that you have the right person versus just going with the first person who's made it this far in that process. Because you might have thrown out 20 resumes. You might have went through the screening phone call with 5 people. You might have got through one person. Remember the guy that I ran through with the verification process immediately got thrown out. So it might have taken you a while to get to this motivational. You're probably so eager to say yes and hire them that you may be overlooking a few things, right? So this is where going through that next process of having someone else give you perspective makes a big difference. So how do we do that? We can do that in a couple different ways, right? So the group panel interviews, this is also termed as a social. What a social is just a group of people who are in a very casual setting, getting to know your candidate. How does your candidate show up when they're in a different setting, right? If you guys frequently meet your clients at a coffee shop, wouldn't it be great to meet him at a coffee shop and see how he's going to interact? If you frequently have happy hour or social engagements, meeting them at the bar for, and I would tell you probably don't do it at a rush happy hour, but do it at a time frame where a bar might be very light, where you can have a casual conversation. You can see how they show up. Are they a lush who's just going to drink everything, and in 20 minutes now they're not there at all? They're just not on, right? It happens. It's true. But you get to see these things, right? And here's a great part. You're so focused on this person needs to solve all my needs. If you have other people show up for you, they're going to give you their honest perspective and say, yeah, that person was great, but I actually didn't like it. True story. a candidate that I ended up going on a panel interview for. The person who was hiring was so desperate to have this person, they were willing to do anything, but they said, I'll stay true to the course. We go on a group interview, right? So we did a social, we all went out to lunch together. And the social, the normal things happened, and it was a group of 4 of us, right? 3 people who are remotely connected to the person who's looking to hire. The person who's looking to hire did not show up, right? Purposely, they don't show up. And their candidate. And as we're going through with the candidate, there's a few things, and I won't repeat what they said, but a few things that they said, I was like, this will never work. I can understand why you like it, but immediately I went back and I told them, I was like, yeah, you should not hire this person at all. And I actually told him, I was like, truth be told, I don't think he's going to take the job with you. There's certain things that he said during this lunch that makes me believe that he doesn't respect you. And he's probably going to either try to take your business or there'll be something negative that will happen. A week later, she got that phone call from the candidate. And he backed himself out of the process and just said he didn't believe in her, didn't believe in her business. But he got that far, and she was so enamored that she was going to pull him in. Can you imagine how much of a train wreck it would have been for a business? Because she was turning the keys over to everything because they trusted that person that much. But this is where an impartial third party can come in and give you that different perspective, right? And you want that. You want that to be. So here's the question that I'll ask, right? We're coming home. We're almost home. Who should you ask to be that different perspective for you? We're individual agents, right? We don't have huge organizations. Who's a trusted resource that you can go to that can give you impartial information?
Brandon.
There you go. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Ilana, other agents.
Absolutely. Other agents here in the market center, your lenders, your title companies, anybody who would interact with this person could be a valuable resource for you because they can have an understanding of you, your business, where you want to be. And if we know you, we've interacted with you, we can kind of tell if there's going to be a personality fit. We can look and see, hey, does this work out? If you have friends that you interact with that know your business, that could be somebody who could be there. Someone who's closely tied to you, they understand your personality and they can see the personality of the other person. You want to have them there. Now, if you have this social interview, you want to make sure that one person who is there is going to be the chair, right? Or the head of this interview. Because you want to keep it focused, you want to keep it personal, purposeful, and you don't want to waste people's time, especially if this is somebody who's an immediate no, that they just need to close the interview off and everybody leave, right? But by doing this, it works well. It doesn't always have to be out and about. It could be in a conference room. I mean, honestly, with the different education systems, hospitality companies, we would just have it in a boardroom. They would come in, it would just be a casual conversation. We'd have 2 or 3 questions we would go through. And my reason for 2 or 3 questions is because if I had 2 or 3 questions with somebody and I couldn't go to 4 or 5 questions, they're probably not going to be the right fit for the entertainment director that we were looking for. We need somebody who can be engaged. And this is their chance to engage with us. And what you're going to find is the candidate typically will ask questions about the person they're going to work for. They want to know about you. This is their time to get all the information that they need to ensure they're going to be in the right place. If you have a larger organizations, guess what you're doing at this exact time when you send them on the social? Guess what that candidate gets to see? Your culture, who you work with, who you surround yourself with. Now you get to show up right then in that moment, even without you being there, you get to show up and show everything that you're about because the people that you're connected with. How they represent you. Riley I embody as part of our culture, right? So much so that she would laugh and say, when I'm going through, walking an agent through, Riley usually is around some capacity. And so now she ends up being a part of the interview. Why? Because she's a part of the culture that we have. But they can also see that it's collaborative. They can also see that, okay, there's great relationships that people have inside of marketing. I was on a recruiting appointment last night with an agent from a different brokerage, right? One of those virtual type things. And in that meeting, one of our agents from this market center just so happened to be at the restaurant that we were at. So for me, this is a perfect time for us to expand and show our culture. So what do? Oh, no, invite the agent over. You're not going to sit down and have dinner with us. We're going to have a great conversation. We're showing who we are. We're showing our culture. And in that conversation, it's wonderful that actually the virtual agent will be here tomorrow to have a further conversation, but they got to see who we are at that exact moment. So while that might not have been a true group interview or a social, we weren't at that point, it let them see who our culture is. So remind yourself, whoever you're inviting to give that group or panel interview, they're representing you, your business, and your culture at the same time.
So
So
you're
we go
saying we
back-
shouldn't be there for that?
No, you should not. So the reason for that is that candidate's going to show up different if you're around, right? They're going to try to portray themselves in the same way they have through that whole interview process. Thinking back to the young lady who was trying to hire the gentleman, he showed up perfect in every other aspect. But when we went on the social, you know, and it is what it is, being one of the first gentlemen that he talked to inside of her organization, I could tell that there was definitely not going to be a personality fit, right? But if she was there, he's going to show up different, right? And this also lets them ask questions about you that they wouldn't get to ask directly to, right? So it's better that you not be a part of that interview, but you want to give them the heads up beforehand, right? You're giving them expectations, you're setting it up, and you can let them know, hey, all right, so just want to let you know, I'm going to set you up with a group interview. And in the group interview, this is with trusted colleagues and partners that I work with. This is going to be very informal. You actually don't have to get dressed all the way up. It's just something where just want to get you to sit down, get to interact. This is going to be a chance for you to get to ask questions about me, about the organization and the business that we work in. You can get it from a neutral perspective, and then they'll just get to give you some feedback as well. Shouldn't take roughly anything but 30 minutes to an hour, just enough time for you to get a good understanding of who we are, who we work with, and the business that we have. And looking to set it up Tuesday at 3 o'clock, you can be in my market center, right? Have coffee, donuts if you want to have anything for them. And that's enough just to get an understanding of what they're going through in that interview process. If you're using myself or Alana, we've typically been through it, so we'll probably be the chairs. But if you have a chair who hasn't done it before, the only thing you're telling them is, hey, really isn't a situation for you to vote yay or nay on this person. I'm just looking for feedback from a neutral party to let me know about the candidate that I'm interviewing, to make sure that they fit within our organization. Just tell me what you think about it and go from there. It should be fun, easy, friendly, relaxed conversation for them, right? So another option for a different perspective. I really enjoy defense boards. What a defense board is a defense board is you taking everything that you've been through thus far, the life story, right? The motivation, you going through, you reviewing their KPAs, you're providing a copy of the KPA, the 30 questions you peppered them with, right? Their thought process. You're providing that to a group of individuals. Typically you want at least 3. And you're basically saying, hey, this is a person I'm looking to hire. Do you mind reviewing these documents to tell me what you think about this candidate? And you want one person to wear a black hat. And what that means is you want one person to go through and really question why you think this person is a great fit for your organization. And then you and the other persons in the defense board are going to defend based upon that information why this is a good candidate for your organization. Here's what's great about that. The person who's wearing the black hat typically isn't connected with your organization, and they are completely neutral and non-biased. And with them having non-bias, they're going to start pinpointing different things that would be there, right? So I had a candidate that I was recently about to hire, right? This will go into this slide and go to the next slide as well. Remember, red light, green light, everything. I actually opted against the defense board. I did the social interview, the references came out great, but there was one thing about this candidate that I was like, I don't know if it's going to work out, right? And so they were a little bit combative in the defense board. I would have had to defend that, and I started thinking about it later on as I chose not to hire him. I don't think I could have defended that. And if I can't defend it at that point, remember, we're red light, green light at any point in time during this process. And so it's vital that you make sure that you use all the references that are there, or you use facts, right? So let's say we go through the group interview, we check references, and even if we go through a defense board, everything checks out, we green light this candidate. Mind you, the candidate is, the only thing he'd be a part of is the group panel interview. The only thing that you'd be a part of in this group is checking the references or being a part of the defense board to defend whether you want to hire this candidate or not. So now we're in our next process, right? This is bringing us on home. It's time for you to make an offer, right? If everything checks out, is it a win-win for him to be in your for them to be in your organization, for you to have them within your organization? Now we want to go through and review the compensation and the job description, right? So as we get to this part, this is what's interesting, and this is what actually has happened. So I'm going through to make the offer, all right? I actually make the offer to this young man. And we go through, how do we make this offer, all right? So inside of your packet, you want to turn to page 41. not just making an offer and saying, hey, all right, the job is paying $40,000 a year. You want the job? Great, here you go. And we're gonna walk through that process, right? You've taken them through a nice journey to help them understand who they are, what they need to do, where their future is going to be, and now you want to tie your business to their future, right? So it starts with honesty, right? A scale of 1 to 10, 10 being completely candid, how honest do you want me to be with you? You're asking this information because now you're seeing how you guys are going to be expected to work together. You're getting some real one-on-one questions answered, right? All right, I want you to be 10, right? Typically, everybody's gonna say 10, or they're gonna say, ooh, I just don't want you to hurt my feelings, and make it a 5.
Yeah.
It's usually where you end up. All right. The next question you're gonna ask is, all right, well, what does that mean to you? Well, give me an example when somebody was honest. So if somebody says 10, hey, I know exactly where I stand. Typically, the answer you get. If somebody says 5, yeah, usually when everybody's honest, that's when bad news comes, and I'm not a fan of that, right? But now you're knowing how they show up and how they want you to show up. And then you want to give them your expectations. On a scale of 1 to 10, I want you to be honest with me at a level of 10, or you might be the person who's a 5, right? But now you're giving them this because now this sets up the expectations between the two of them, right? All right. So now we flip over. We're going to go through, what does a win-win look like? So what is it? How does somebody win with you? How do I show up and how do I be there for you? Now that you told me that, I'm going to tell you the opposite side. This is how someone wins with me. How does someone lose with me? I'm going to flip it right around and let them know this is how someone loses with me. So now you've already tied your future with me. You saw the goal there. And now we're having an expectation conversation to make sure that we're aligned with each other, right? Now, when we go through this, let's talk about sensitive issues, right? If something sensitive would arise, how do you want me to address this to you, right? We know the KPA is there, but now this is just the framework of how they want you to bring conversations up, right? And now if something sensitive happens with me or that you need to bring to me, this is how I want it brought up. You've now set your expectations for the person. And now that key part comes up, right? All right, page 44, this is your key. Now you're going over your job standard expectations. They see themselves with you. They see themselves getting to their future with you. Now they have to understand what metrics they need to do on a regular basis to get there. So this is where we're going back to that job description and we're breaking it down saying, here are the standards that you must meet to perform at your job. What are your thoughts about it? We're asking that question because we want to make sure that they understand the role that they're going into. We want them to be successful in it, but if they're going to have a problem or if they don't see, you know, an honest answer that somebody will give is, you know, the only issue I might have is a time commitment. And I have to get my kids on Tuesdays and Thursdays very early. So I just don't know if I can represent your business the way you want on those days. Now you can address it. Now you can have a conversation, say, you know what, this is the beauty of our world, we're flexible. With that flexibility, you're going to have enough time to be able to go with your kids, but then also remember, they've also told you how you win with it, how they show up. So you have the game plan, right? And then we're going to ask them how they want to be held accountable, right? So now when they're not living up to expectations, you have a signed agreement because you want to get this signed with them to show how they represent themselves, how you hold them accountable, and what success looks like for both of them, right? So now if we go over this and we have this set up, at this point, you're rarely going to have somebody who will bow out of the conversation, right? Most people are willing to proceed or go forward, or they're going to wait to hear that one big thing, what's the money look like and how much are you going to pay? What's the compensation? Well, if you did all your legwork up front, you should be within the market range of the income that should be paid out, right? You should be right there that if there's another opportunity that's out there, I guarantee that they did not pour into this person the way that you've done, right? Because right now you're on hour 6 of meeting, right? We've only had 5 hours worth of interview. This is the 6th hour, and this is just making the job offer to them, right? So you want to have your prepared job offer, but then as you go through the compensation, I greenlighted a candidate up until the moment that we made the offer, he countered, and at that moment I rescinded the offer. This is the gentleman I was just talking about. The reason why is because my concern of how they show up. My concern in how they show up was that whenever they got the opportunity, they would challenge the system and they would try to it's the easiest way to say is that they essentially thought of themselves as better than the group. We are a collective group of individuals who are innovative but collaborative in pushing our industry forward. And there was a collaboration issue that I noticed with him early on in the process. This would have been the thing that would be hard for me to explain, but it only showed up in one small little sliver inside of the screening process, right? It never showed up again. The KPA, it actually showed up in the KPA where they combated a few points, but it also said that they were a combative person, right? So now we made the job offer. They countered the job offer. And the job offer that they countered, this would go to Candy's point of a commission-only employee, not wanting a sales job because it's commission-only, right? Well, their benefit structure, their bonuses, and their minimum job requirements that they agreed to that they could adhere would pay them more than what their minimum salary expectations would ever be. Why would there be an issue? And as we went back and we negotiated, I realized that this is less about the money. This is just about that person wanting to feel better than the group. Now we go back to personality. We go back to culture fit. It doesn't match up. So at that moment, remember in this entire process, red light, green light, red light, green light, red light, green light. And that moment, it's a red light. Here's the funny part. What comes next is another candidate that is shining as a shining star compared to how he showed up in certain aspects. So do not be afraid to cut the process short as you go through it if you recognize that someone is not showing up in the right way. All right. So why do we go through this process? Right? We spend an entire day going over what to look for, how to hire, and why we walk through this process. We do it because we want to break down the walls, right? We want to make sure that we can see who this person truly is. We want to remain neutral. We don't want this process to be about you. We want it to be about that candidate. And then we have to be willing to say at any moment in time, this person is not a good fit. Be objective, but be energetic, right? Be energetic as you go through. What you're going to find is, Alana said this earlier during the day, that some people might not be right for this specific role, but they might be right for your organization. So if that's the case, guess what you're doing? You want to keep their contact information because you're building a bench with the people who might fit in your organization as you grow. As your business expands, you might have a bench that you can come back to and say, all right, we have some great people full of talent that now might be the perfect time for it. They're not going to forget the process that they've been through because you've helped them expand their personality in such a wonderful way, right? So remember, red light, green light through the entire process. Do not be afraid to hit the check button at any moment in time. As you go through, make the offer and they're accepted. Remember, you've already set up the job expectation conversation to know exactly where they should be as they go forward, right? So here's the question. Yep, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I wanted to get a clarity on, so the honesty expectations, that discussion, when I'm asking these questions, the answers are to be applied when the person is in the role or with the discussion, to apply during the discussion. So when I'm asking, how honest do you want me to be with you? Am I asking how honest you want me to be with you as your employer or during this discussion?
I'm gonna ask you as an employer. You have an employee, you have your potential employee in front of you. What do you want to know? Don't you want to know how honest they want you to be with them at all times?
Right. And so based on their answer, I'm basing my green light, red light based on how they're answering me on that scale of 1 to 10.
So you can, right? I mean, and here's the funny part. You're red light and green light and everything. So to me, I actually never thought about red light and green light in somebody at that exact moment, right? Because if I'm just having an honesty conversation with you, and now you're just telling me exactly where you want to be and how honest you want me to be with you. Typically, like I said, I've seen 10 and 5 be that answer, right? The person who says 5, they don't want me not to be honest. They typically just are afraid of getting their feelings hurt from the truth, right? I don't think that's a negative for them. And it's a conversation of how now do we show up for each other when we have our conversations. So this is a guide. This is one of those things that you're going to attach inside of that KPA so you know. Because what happens later on down the line where they're not performing at their job, or they're not performing at the expectation level that they've shown up in the interview and they're not doing what they want to do. Now you can reference back to this and say, all right, you always wanted me to be a 10 out of 10 honest with you. I gotta be honest, man, you're not cutting it right now. But then they told you how they want you to handle sensitive information. So now you can expand on that conversation based upon that information, but vice versa. If you're not leading in the way they want to be led, you just gave them a green light to come to you and be 10 out of 10 honest and say, hey, I need more. You are or you are not giving it to me.
Got it.
Great question. Great question. So, final stages that we go through, right? This is the next homework assignment or the next thing that we're taking away. And this is now that we're thinking about going through this hiring process. We have a game plan that we're working on. We're writing down our vision and value statement. We want to make sure that we have a great job description for the exact role that we're looking for. We know the process that we're going to start going through. But let's envision our business. What does it look like down the road, right? Here's your motivational question. We come back, we're sitting in this room 5 years from now. And I ask you how your business has been, and you say, man, my business has grown phenomenally and it's awesome. Now, what does your organization look like? How many people do you have reporting to you? Hopefully not more than 5. How many people are reporting to them? And now, what does it look like today? So here's the challenge, right? You guys have the framework. You know what's necessary to be able to hire, to take this next step. What's the one thing, right, that's standing between owning the job and owning the business? Right? It's the empire builders that you bring in, the people who you hire inside your organization. I asked this question at the very beginning of the day, and it's been on the board for the people who've been in the room. When you think about hiring someone, are you hiring someone for a job? Or are you hiring someone for your business? How are they going to show up to help you? You have the framework, you have the tools to make sure it's going to be a successful hire and that they have a successful career. How are you going to use it? All right, so our next class is going to be part 2 of this series. And now that we know how to hire, now that we've gone through, we've greenlighted somebody, we made the offer, they've accepted, we're going to talk about how to train this individual, what we need to go through. So this class is going to be on the 7th. And we're going to take the time through that day, and we're going to talk about how we train them so they can go from in 30 days to 90 days, where you own that job or you own that role, and you're giving them the support, the supervision, the training, right? Where they accomplish and they go forward to where they own that job, right? And now they've developed and your business is running because you have talent in that role to carry you forward. All right. That wraps us up. Hopefully today was a great day. Was there any ahas, any great information that you guys pulled out that you learned today? Let's have 3 good tidbits of knowledge before we wrap up. I'll give it first because it sticks to me from what we've gone through. And it is the slow to hire aspect that Candy said earlier today. That slow to hire for her means the upfront process that she goes through of establishing what the role is, what the person is that I'm looking for, what are my intangibles, what criteria do we need to go through? Am my business truly ready to hire this person? And do I have everything in place so I can start to bring them in? Going through that before she starts the interview process, that is her slow to hire so she can move quickly through the interview process. That was my one big aha that I had from earlier today. Anybody else have another?
Taking the time to go through the steps, because at the end of the day, you're creating this relationship with this person. You want them to be around long term. It's better to know up front that they're going to be along for the journey and be happy to be along. So yeah, I think sometimes people say, well, so much stuff I have to do and I don't have time for that. Well, you better make time for it now. Otherwise, it's going to be dragging you down later. And it's going to be a lot worse.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I learned a lot about the interview process. Just the steps going through it, and like learning about the person, and just knowing that just getting that first bit of information isn't good, because we all know that everybody puts a lot of stuff on there that's not really,
Mhm.
I don't know, anybody can write your resume.
Yep. There's a lot of fluff in the very beginning,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, and you really need to dig into it and find out how people are, if they're gonna show off, if they're gonna be honest, you can trust their work. I mean, like I said, from the very beginning, simple things to see what kind of person people really are. You know, what value do they have?
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Great nuggets, great nuggets. All right. Well, that's it. Hopefully you guys are registered for the class on the 7th. Alana will be going through how they earn the job, right? And how to train that person for the role that you hired them for. All right. I appreciate everyone's time
All right,
today.
Thank you.
You guys have a great evening.
Thank you.
You guys.
For letting us out early.
Absolutely.
The cards that Riley mentioned early, I think it had the verbs that we were using for the
Yep, we will attach those inside of a link or in a follow-up email that comes out later.
okay, great.
Old cards, and it basically gives just adjectives to help you build out your value proposition. So yep, we'll send that out to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Problem, thank
the training today.
Problem, thank you. I'm glad that you guys got a lot out of it.